Welcome to Royal Empire, your source for the latest royal news and updates. Don't forget to subscribe to stay informed. Meghan Markle has found herself at the center of a controversy that's hard to ignore. This isn't some quiet backstage issue. It's a full-blown spectacle that has shaken up the fashion world. One of the most unexpected parts of the story comes from Dior, a brand with a history of dressing queens, princesses, and icons. For Dior to outright cut ties with someone? That's a rarity, almost unheard of. But in Meghan's case, it wasn't a surprise to those who had been working behind the scenes. Insiders say Dior simply didn't want the drama, the confusion, or the risk. Because wherever Meghan went, stories followed. There were whispers about missing gowns, unpaid dresses, and photo shoots where items went missing without any clear explanation. Some dismissed these stories as exaggerated, others as minor misunderstandings. But then something happened that no one could ignore. A dress, a moment, a photo shoot, a simple green gown that vanished when the camera stopped rolling, and then reappeared years later, worn by Meghan herself. And that's when everything changed. The world wanted answers. What had happened to that gown? And why did it feel like the ground beneath Meghan was shaking? To understand the whole picture, we have to go back to the beginning. The story starts with a seemingly innocent photograph of Meghan posing in a soft green designer dress during a shoot for Variety magazine. It was nothing extraordinary. Just another celebrity photo shoot. But then someone noticed something strange. That dress, it had never been returned. According to the fashion house, the gown wasn't a gift. It wasn't part of a paid deal. It had been loaned out, just like so many other pieces for magazine shoots. But when the team packed up, the gown was nowhere to be found. No paperwork, no permission, no explanation. The story might have stayed hidden, but then Meghan wore that same dress again, 3 years later. That second appearance set off alarms. Designers, stylists, wardrobe coordinators, everyone in the industry suddenly remembered the whispers. Everyone remembered the warnings. They remembered the pattern they had tried to ignore. Because this wasn't a one-time mistake. According to insiders, this was a signature move. The moment that green dress reappeared on Meghan, it was like the universe handed the fashion world a receipt. A receipt they couldn't ignore. A receipt that made them ask, what else has happened? And that's when the quiet rumors grew louder. Was Meghan walking away with designer pieces again and again, without permission? It wasn't just the green dress. When the dress resurfaced, the reaction from designers wasn't shock, it was recognition. Stylists and designers had been quietly avoiding lending pieces for Meghan's shoots for years. Some assistants had stopped offering lookbooks to her team. Brand managers had started ignoring requests from her camp. It wasn't personal. It was protective. Because they had seen a pattern. If Meghan wore something, the designer might never see it again. And when a fashion house like Dior decided enough was enough, it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a public spectacle. It was silent. It was final. And the entire industry heard it loud and clear. Before all the titles, before royalty, before the palace's strict protocols, there was a simpler time, back in Toronto. A time when Meghan was just another actress on a commercial set. According to the wardrobe staff from one of her shoots, Meghan walked in confident, charming, and ready to work. But when the shoot ended, something was off. A pair of Aquazzura heels were missing. A bundle of clothing had quietly disappeared. At first, the wardrobe coordinator didn't panic. Sometimes items get misplaced, sometimes assistants forget to return things. But months later, when Meghan wore those exact shoes during her royal engagement announcement, everything clicked into place. The shoes weren't misplaced. They had been taken. When asked about it, Meghan supposedly explained she didn't want her worn items to end up on resale sites. She said she was too famous for that. But fashion insiders questioned why she didn't just ask to keep the shoes, or better yet, why not pay for them like everyone else? The Right Man incident became a whispered warning among the fashion industry. A quiet message passed along from stylist to stylist, be careful. Things go missing around her. And just like that, the first crack in Meghan's fashion reputation appeared. When Meghan entered Kensington Palace, she wasn't just stepping onto another film set. She was stepping into an institution built on strict rules. Rules that had been followed without question by every royal woman before her. But insiders say Meghan arrived with a Hollywood mindset. She thought that if a designer offered her clothing, it was a gift. She believed that wearing a brand's piece was already a form of payment. That's not how royalty works. The royal family doesn't accept free clothes. Not dresses, not jewelry, not accessories. Everything must be purchased, logged, and cleared through the system. It's a system designed to prevent scandals. But within weeks, sources say Meghan began requesting designer gifts, something that completely violated royal protocol. When staff reminded her of the rules, her reaction was sharp. She pushed back, argued, even believed that exceptions should be made for her. That's when the palace staff realized something uncomfortable. It wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a pattern. Clothes weren't returning. Borrowed pieces weren't being accounted for. And requests were being made that the palace simply couldn't fulfill. Some staff members tried to explain patiently that no member of the royal family accepts gifted clothing, but Meghan, according to insiders, felt targeted. She felt controlled, misunderstood. What was meant to be a gentle conversation about royal protocol turned into a much bigger rift. Behind closed doors, courtiers began whispering that Meghan didn't like being told no. And with every royal rule she pushed back against, the walls between her and the royal institution grew taller. The wardrobe issue didn't stop there. While Charles dealt with the financial fallout of her spending habits, another storm was brewing. This time, a deeply personal, emotional rift with one of Meghan's most high-profile acquaintances, a British fashion icon who until then had never been involved in any scandal. The public started to ask, if Meghan is so wealthy, why would she take anything without permission? She lives in a multi-million-dollar mansion. She has lucrative deals worth tens of millions. She has a brand, a platform, a global following. So why would someone with so much opt to take items that weren't hers? The answer insiders offer is simple. It wasn't about money. It was about entitlement. Meghan, they say, carried herself like someone who believed that wearing a designer's piece was enough payment in itself. She thought rules didn't apply when fame was involved. But inside the royal family, that mindset clashed with centuries-old traditions. And inside the fashion world, it disrupted sensitive relationships. This wasn't a financial issue. It was a behavioral one. And once people realized that, they stopped trying to make sense of it. Now, let's dive back into the ongoing saga surrounding Meghan Markle and her royal fashion controversies. As we left off, Meghan's actions were already shaking the foundations of the royal family's long-established protocols, and the ripple effects didn't stop there. In fact, one of the most eye-opening moments came when the public started to realize how Meghan's actions were impacting not just the royal family, but the designers who had once been eager to work with her. For years, Meghan had been able to rely on the goodwill of top-tier fashion houses, the kind of luxury brands that dress Hollywood's biggest stars and the world's most famous royalty. But the longer she worked as a member of the royal family, the more designers began to question their involvement with her. When it became clear that many of Meghan's borrowed items were not being returned, and in some cases, were disappearing without any trace, trust began to break down. What seemed like isolated incidents at first began to form a troubling pattern, and soon, whispers turned into open conversations among stylists and brand managers. These conversations weren't about style or trendsetting. They were about a deep mistrust of how Meghan handled designer loans. For the royal family, this wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a potential PR nightmare. As we know, the royal family operates under strict guidelines when it comes to finances, and everything must be accounted for. But Meghan's actions revealed a different approach to fashion, one that clashed with the palace's rules. And this tension escalated to the point where Meghan's spending became a source of concern for Prince Charles himself. To put things into perspective, let's take a look at the numbers. While other members of the royal family, like Kate Middleton, have carefully managed their wardrobes with modest expenses, Meghan's wardrobe spending skyrocketed during her first year as a working royal. Reports revealed that while Kate's annual wardrobe costs were in the range of $100,000, Meghan's came close to a staggering $1 million in just 1 year. The question that lingered wasn't just how the money was being spent, but why so many of these items were not being worn again after a single event. Designers, who were already starting to feel uneasy, began questioning when they would see their items returned. Prince Charles, ever the pragmatist, reportedly felt a mix of shock and concern. He wasn't worried about the cost itself. After all, the royal family can afford luxury, but the larger implication of this spending pattern was hard to ignore. What did it say about Meghan's understanding of royal expectations? Was this just an oversight, or was it a deeper issue? Sources close to the royal family say that Charles, recognizing the growing concerns, decided to have a private conversation with Meghan. His goal wasn't to confront her, but rather to gently explain the royal family's traditions and the expectations regarding finances. But as insiders revealed, Meghan didn't take kindly to this discussion. Instead of seeing it as a helpful conversation, she felt as though she was being reprimanded or controlled. She was, after all, used to a different way of thinking in Hollywood, where things like designer gifts and expensive wardrobes were often seen as perks of the job. What happened next was a shift in Meghan's relationship with the palace. The subtle pushback against royal expectations was growing into a wider divide. And it didn't stop with fashion. Meghan's approach to other aspects of royal life, like her public image and personal decisions, began to rub the palace staff the wrong way. Every time a boundary was set, Meghan seemed to push harder against it. It wasn't just a matter of royal protocol anymore. It became personal. At the heart of the issue was not just the spending or the missing garments, it was the perception of entitlement. Meghan, according to those who have watched the drama unfold, began to view her image as an invaluable asset, one that demanded certain privileges. In Hollywood, fame can sometimes overshadow rules, but inside the royal family, it's the opposite. The institution is built on a system of tradition, order, and respect for boundaries. And Meghan, who had spent years navigating the spotlight on her own terms, now found herself in an environment where the rules weren't flexible. She couldn't just rely on her celebrity status to bend the system in her favor. That's all for today's Royal Empire. Make sure to subscribe for more exclusive updates and stories. Stay connected.